hear a go, no go on our side pretty soon for Dragon to get the go-ahead to approach waypoint 2, which is that point only 20 meters away from the station. But again, we'll have those demos in between.
You did mention that centerline camera. It's actually very close to my heart. It's one of the first projects I worked on here at SpaceX. So I'm very excited to see that in action for a live docking. And Dragon right now is using its Draco thrusters to control its approach to the International Space Station. There are 16 in total, with 4 of them positioned around the top where the nose cone is. And those 4 will be used for the retreat command that we're expecting very soon. So like I was saying earlier, this is a diagram of where the Dragon is currently headed. If it was just to not fire any of its thrusters and just keep free floating in space, letting orbital mechanics to kind of take it towards closer toward the International Space Station, that blue line is the free return trajectory. Right now, you can see that blue line intersecting with what the tiny gray dot there. That is waypoint 1. The gray dot to the left of waypoint 1 is actually the retreat hold position. So after we get to waypoint 1 and are commanded to retreat, Dragon will push back towards that the leftmost gray dot. That is the retreat hold spot.
Yeah, and right now we're still just about 10 minutes or so from that waypoint number 1, which again, it's 150 meters out in front of the International Space Station, right on line with that docking port. So again, just about 10 minutes away until Dragon arrives at that point. So that's going to be another exciting milestone checked off, and the teams are, again, just monitoring all the data on Dragon. They're going to be doing go, no go polls between the teams in Houston and the teams out here in Hawthorne, making sure everything's still looking good on board Dragon systems before they give the go to move in even closer to the space station. Again, we were expecting that initial contact and capture, so that docking essentially to come at about 3 a.m. Pacific time. We are a little bit ahead of schedule as we've just kind of been burning through all these milestones. Everything looking great so far. Vehicle still not tracking any issues and everything going smoothly. So again, about 10 minutes away from waypoint number 1.
Just from waypoint number 1 is at 150 meters away from the International Docking Adapter. That's less than the average city block. Dragon is getting very close to the International Space Station. You can see some intermittent views here from Dragon's transmission to the ground. Looks like the space station has come around into the light. Looks pretty beautiful. We will get even more detailed pictures of that as the Dragon gets closer and closer to the forward port, over the overlay that the crew would be seeing if they were inside Dragon right now. There is a little green dot in the very center that's currently tracking the docking port, and if Dragon tilts away from it, it should stay tracked. But right now, since we're getting this in the ground, this would normally be overlaid over the centerline camera. Right now, we're getting from a different camera that's a little bit off center, so it's not going to be
Hey guys, SpaceX ஓட Crew Dragon capsule இப்போ இன்டர்நேஷனல் ஸ்பேஸ் ஸ்டேஷன்ஸ்ல டாக் ஆக போகுது. இந்த வியூ வந்து Crew Dragonல இருக்கக்கூடிய கேமராவோட வியூ பார்த்தீங்கன்னாக்கா இன்டர்நேஷனல் ஸ்பேஸ்
Dragon
ஸ்டேஷன்
and the ISS have both come into the sunlight, and it looks like a beautiful, glowing brightly against the backdrop of space.
SpaceX ஓட Crew Dragon capsule இருந்து ISS ஓட ஃபுல் வியூ வந்து இப்போ தெரியுது. இப்போ டாக் ஆக போகுது. அந்த சென்டர்ல இருக்க கிரீன் டாட் இருக்குல்ல, அந்த இடத்துல தான் வந்து டாக்கிங் நடக்க போகுது. ஸோ இதுக்கு முன்னாடி வந்து கார்கோ டிராகன், அதாவது ஸ்பேஸ் ஓட கார்கோ சப்ளை பண்ற அந்த டிராகன் கேப்சூல் வந்து டாக் ஆகாது. பட் SpaceX டிராகன் கேப்சூல கனடா ஆர்ம் அப்படின்ற ஒரு ரொபோட்டிக் ஆர்ம் மூலயமா வந்து பிடிச்சிட்டு போயிட்டு டாக் பண்ணுவாங்க. ஸோ இப்போ ஃபர்ஸ்ட் டைமா வந்து Crew Dragon capsule autonomously தானாவே வந்து அதில் டாக் ஆக போகுது.
Kind of getting hands on with all the operations today. They're going to be commanding the vehicle to retreat. And just hearing, we are going to be go for that retreat demo. So again, we're going to get to waypoint 150 meters in front of the space station, and then it's going to start moving in, and then the crew is going to command a retreat. So they're actually going to send a command using computers on the station.
So Dragon capsule ISS க்கும் இருக்க distance வந்து 150 meter அப்படின்னு சொல்றாங்க. So இன்னும் few metersல few minutesல வந்து docking start ஆகும்.
Back past waypoint 1 out to about 180 meters away from the space station. The crew will then send another command for the vehicle to hold. It'll stop there. Teams will look at the data. And then once everything looks good, the ground will send another command for Dragon to resume. And the next waypoint will be waypoint number 2, only 20 meters away.
Command to the Dragon once it hits waypoint 1. Just want to talk a little bit about right now how Dragon receives those commands. I actually was lucky enough to work on the communication side of Dragon during my first few years at SpaceX. Dragon is capable of receiving commands directly from the space station. It's also capable of receiving commands directly from the ground and through NASA's TDRS satellites, the tracking data relay satellites that are currently in orbit above the Earth. Right now, the C2V2 system, that's the common communications for visiting vehicles, that provides a link for communications and data directly from the visiting cases, the Dragon 2, to the International Space Station. And once we're safely at waypoint 1 and get that call for a go for the retreat commands, they will be using the computers inside the ISS over that link to send a command to Dragon. They did test that link with turning on that light, like we said earlier, so we know it's working pretty well right now, and hopefully the retreat command will hear that call out soon.
Yeah, and just before we lost signal, you were getting some great views from a high-definition camera on board the International Space Station. Those will be back up shortly, and those cameras are actually on the very end of the docking port where Dragon's ultimately going to be flying to. So right next to that international docking adapter on the front end of the machine connected to the Harmony module. And so they're going to provide really great views once that is done and it's at waypoint 1, which again, just about 150 meters away from.
It's just a little bit intermittent. But when we do get those great views from Dragon, you're now just being able to make out the features of the international docking adapter just a little bit to the left of center. That is where we'll see even clearer view as Dragon gets closer. Right now, it's still only about, it's approaching 150 meters away from the station. When we get close into 20 meters, which is waypoint 1, that docking adapter will be in full view, and we'll be able to see the details of the international docking adapter, its pedals and everything. We'll be able to explain how the docking system is going to work.
Yeah, but a great view of the station. So right in the center of the crosshair right now, that's actually the Japanese module Kibo. Just to give you a little walkthrough of what you're looking at on the station, just to the left of the crosshair is that international docking adapter. You can see the station's robotic arm, that thin white line just beneath it, which that arm was actually used to do a survey of the docking adapter a couple of days hence of this mission. To the left of that is the Columbus module, which is the European module, has a lot of life support and life sciences research hardware inside. And then the docking adapter itself is connected to Node 2, which is the Harmony module, and that's where the crew is going to open up a hatch on that side and the hatch on Dragon itself after we have this successful docking. All right, we just heard confirmation that Dragon is now inside of the Keep Out Sphere. Now, again, the Keep Out Sphere is an imaginary circle around the International Space Station of about 200 meters. And this is just there to help govern any of the flight paths for vehicles ultimately approaching the international side, 200 meters. Again, it's going to continue approaching until it's just 150 meters away. And then shortly after we get to waypoint 1, the crew is going to send Dragon a retreat command. So once it actually closes 10 more meters past waypoint 1, gets to 140, they're going to send a command, and Dragon is going to slowly back away. And this is just to demonstrate Dragon's ability to perform a controlled maneuver like braking and retreating, and just also demonstrating the crew's ability to command Dragon, as again they're in the loop the whole way up. They're monitoring. They're using displays on board that have kind of a little come through, and they're just looking for any perturbations in Dragon's approach to the space station, both its attitude, kind of where it is on the center line and everything like that. So all that coming up real soon. Obviously very important to demonstrate that Dragon can do these maneuvers, as once there are people on board, we'll want to make sure the Dragon's fully functional. So that's why we're doing this demo mission.
It's important to note these systems, these tests utilize all of the systems in sort of like a round trip way. It's a very thorough test of all the systems aboard Dragon and the space station. Both say use their equipment on the station to send the command over that link to the Dragon, have the Dragon receive it, have the flight computers process those commands, and then send individual commands all around the Dragon. This really is a thorough test to make sure that when we have people on board this spacecraft, that everything's going to go the way we think it does, and that's the whole point of this mission, really.
Yeah. All right, we should be less than a minute to waypoint 1.
Just a reminder that Keep Out Sphere that we just crossed is about 200 meters away from the station in all directions, about the block, and waypoint 1 is only 150 meters away. So we're just cruising in on those last 50 meters to waypoint 1. And the space station continuing to come into higher and higher resolution view. Again, this is a camera from this Dragon spacecraft looking at the ISS.
All right, and we just heard the conversation there from Ann McLean back down to Houston. So we're past waypoint number 1, and the retreat command has been sent. So we're actually going to see Dragon kind of stop here. And it was at 140 meters roughly when that retreat command was sent. So now Dragon's going to back away. And then the crew's actually going to send another command for Dragon B when it's about 180 meters away. And then once it gets to that hold point, they'll do another checkout of Dragon systems, and then it's over to the teams behind us here at MCCX in Hawthorne to send another command to Dragon to actually begin its final approach towards the International Space Station. Well, almost final. I keep for it to be final, but that'll bring it into waypoint 2.
Dragon's currently using its 16 total Draco thrusters. These are thrusters that burn up a combination of hydrogen and nitrogen tetroxide. These are hypergolic fuels that Dragon has in its tanks. There are 16 total, grouped into pods of 4 sets of 3 around the base of the cone of Dragon, and then a set of 4 right up near the nose cone. Dragon approaches the space station with the nose cone pointed towards the ISS. So when it's given this retreat command, it uses those 4 thrusters at the very top to turn on and thrust, and pushes it back away from the station. So like Dan said, we're actually going to see the space station slightly drift further away. Dragon, when it was given the retreat command, will be headed towards the command hold point at 180 meters. Again, still on the V bar of the station.
And we did hear the confirmation that the retreat is in progress. So Dragon, again, slowly backing away. And the Capcom over in Houston did radio up to Ann McLean on one of the space-to-ground loops on that hold command at 180 meters. So that's the next milestone that we're going to be looking for.
A really interesting thing on this heads-up display in the bottom left-hand corner, you can actually see a diagram of the Draco thrusters on the Dragon spacecraft. And every time they light up, that's one of those Dracos firing and adding thrust and changing the direction of Dragon.
And we're hearing on our end that was a successful retreat demo. So we're moving along really big. From the station, successful retreat demo.
Second successful retreat that you and I have experienced live, Dan.
That is right. This one was planned, though.
Yes.
All right, so at this point, Dragon is just 180 meters or so away from the International Space Station, and that camera's it's just moving in a straight line directly across from that international docking adapter, which now that the retreat demo has been completed, it's going to start moving its way back towards the International Space Station.
Just a reminder that what you're seeing right now is a simulated view of what you'd see if you were inside the Dragon right now on those screens. That's an overlay on top of the forward media cam of the Dragon that looks directly down out where the nose cone is unhinged and open. So right now you're seeing a view from the high definition camera on the International Space Station. We can't see the Dragon right now, but it is out there. And when it gets a little closer towards not be able to miss it, it'll be only 20 meters away.
Yeah, and so right now, Dragon is still retreating a little bit further away from the station. It's getting out to about 180 meters, and once it hits that, the crew will send a hold command, and then they'll just kind of let Dragon sit there for a little bit. And you can see in this diagram with those approach corridors and other things that the crew's carefully monitoring, just making sure Dragon's kind of staying online with everything. Once it gets out to 180 meters, we're going to command that hold, and then we'll sit there for a little bit, and then it's over to the flight controllers here in Hawthorne to command Dragon to begin its approach towards waypoint 2.
Waypoint 2 is that gray dot that's in the very, very close to the International Space Station, the diagram you're seeing on your screen right now. Just to give you an idea of the scale of the distances we're seeing. And on your screen, you can see thrusters firing of that Dragon. Right now, it's a little bright. The contrast is a little off, but you can see the every time one of those Draco thrusters fires, you can see its exhaust gases spewing away from the Dragon. It's a great view right there.
It's great to get some views from the station side of Dragon, yeah. And hopefully once it gets in close, we'll get some views from those cameras right on the end of the docking adapter. But the thrusters fire in space too. Look at them go.
Reminder that Dragon is a totally autonomous vehicle. It's station keeping. It's holding its position all by itself right now. Those are all the Dragon flight computers making minute adjustments whenever it feels it needs to stay in the right position.
And we got an update, Dragon now about 160 again. We're going out to 180, and then the crew should be sending a hold command to the spacecraft. And it sounds like the rate of opening, or basically how quickly Dragon's flying away from the station, is only about 0.8 meters per second. So
slow and steady wins the race.
Slow and steady.
Now that we're in the sun, Dragon is charging up its internal batteries with its body-mounted solar panels on the trunk. On your screen right now, you can see a side-by-side view of two camera views. One on the left is from the International Space Station looking at the Dragon, and when it comes back, the one on the left, or the one on the right, is from the Dragon looking at the ISS. Two spacecraft looking at each other. It's a little hard to make out here, but in this view, you can actually see the nose cone hinged open. In the previous cargo Dragon, the nose cone was jettisoned shortly after launch, but this, in an effort to make the spacecraft as reusable as possible, the nose cone is actually hinged and it opens up. You can see the nose cone, it's sort of like a dome hanging off the top of Dragon in its open position. After being attached to the station, it'll close that nose cone on its way back down to Earth after its mission attached to the space station is completed.
They're going to command it to hold, so it'll camp out there at 180 meters. And then right now, in the meantime, the teams in Houston and in Hawthorne are getting ready to do a go, no-go for the actual approach into waypoint number 2. Bring Dragon even closer.
Copy.
And McLean sending the hold command.
Houston, the vehicle mode is hold. Copy, hold. Rage 181.
And you just heard it. Dragon is currently holding out at the command hold point at 180 meters away from the space station, hanging out, waiting for the command to approach.
Transition to the lab and monitor hold per block Charlie, line 3 and 1.102 Dragon approach and retreat monitoring. Also at this time, we need the lab forward hatch closed, and you will need to bring up space to ground 1 on the lab in the lab ATUs. Houston Station copies. Transition in process.
And with that hold being successful, it looks like we are about 15 minutes ahead on still. So we were expecting that initial contact and capture to be at about 3 a.m. Pacific. So now could be 2:45 a.m. Pacific. We'll keep an eye on the timeline and everything, but moving very smooth through all of the operations today. If you're just now joining us, Crew Dragon right there, only 180 meters away from the International Space Station, getting a great zoom in now, and pretty soon it's going to be zooming itself towards the International Space Station. It's been a smooth day so far. We started a couple of kilometers away, moved into waypoint 0 inside of the approach ellipsoid. At that point, it was only 400 meters away from the space station, and it flew up and around into the front portion of the station, looking right down the barrel of the docking adapter where it now sits. We went past waypoint 1, which is 150 meters away. We had a successful retreat demonstration with the crew sending the command. It retreated out to 180 meters where it now sits, thanks to a successful hold command and demonstration from the crew.
As Dan said, we were expecting a contact at about 3 o'clock a.m. Pacific time. Excuse me. We will have sunlight until about 2:45 a.m. Pacific time. So if we are 15 minutes ahead of schedule, we may even get some great sunlight views of the Dragon within waypoint 2, which again, 20 meters away from the space station, we'll be able to see all the featured SpaceX docking system.
And so for right now, Dragon's just going to continue holding at about 180 meters away from the station. Again, the team's now looking at all the data, how Dragon's systems have been performing so far. And once everybody's comfortable and they do one more go, no-go poll, Dragon's going to resume its approach, and it's going to fly into waypoint 2. And at that point, it's only going to be 20 meters away from station.
I have a copy.
And for those of you just joining us, we are watching a live view from the International Space Station looking towards the Dragon spacecraft, currently at only 180 meters away.
Station Houston and station for step 6. All video and overlays look nominal. Prop age is less than 1. All status fields are showing expected status. And with
screen right now, system overlay that if you were on the International Space Station looking at that laptop, you'd be able to see the Dragon approaching and getting closer and closer to the International docking adapter.
To resume the approach. And we copy.
So NASA astronaut Anne McClain radioing they're ready on board the International Space Station for Dragon to resume its approach. So now the teams down here on the ground will kind of check the final boxes, do the go, no-go poll amongst everybody out in the International Space Station Flight Control Room in Houston. The teams here in Hawthorne and the Dragon will be able to resume its approach. So again, we're just 180 meters away right now. Eventually going to be flying in shortly to a spot just 20 meters away from station. this flight. So far, Dragon obviously conducted a successful launch yesterday to bring it into its initial orbit, and then the Dragon spacecraft is on its way to the space station. And that included checking out the GPS unit multiple times, 2 different times, both checking its own GPS coordinates against ground models down on Earth, and also checking them against the GPS on board the International Space Station. Just about 2 hours after the launch, it did a demo of its Draco thrusters using 2 thrusters on the front of Dragon just to do 2 burns to simulate abort capability. And then it's done all of these demonstrations so far. The crew initially turning on a blinking light just to make sure they could command the vehicle, and then just executing this retreat and hold demonstration. One more that's going to be called the controllability, where they're actually going to set the speed of the just to mimic docking just for a short period of time as they go back past waypoint number 1, which is 150 miles away, or meters away. Meanwhile, the team's right now conducting that final go, no-go poll at the hold point, at which point they're going to get ready to resume the approach, move past waypoint 1 down to waypoint 2, and only be 20 meters away.
You just heard that. Sounds like Dragon. Oh. So we are hearing that Dragon has been cleared to do the approach towards waypoint 2. That is, again, only 20 meters away from the International Docking Adapter.
Station Houston on 1, Dragon is resuming approach to waypoint 2. Monitor per step 7 in 1.102. Dragon approach and retreat monitor.
Dragon is currently resuming its approach. Again, after that commanded retreat, it went back out to 180. Maybe 170, 180 meters away, was commanded to hold, and it has just been given the go-ahead to re-approach back to waypoint 2.
That's right. The teams here in Hawthorne giving the command to Dragon, so it's once more on that approach. And again, everything is going to be really slow on this approach, closing in at a rate of just about 1/10 of a meter per second or so. About the docking speeds once they pass waypoint 1 in one final demonstration. But we are on the way now towards waypoint 2, so Dragon's going to start closing in.
Station.
Right here from the International Space Station.
And you'll hear Anne McClain, the NASA astronaut on board, radioing down on the space to grounds as she and Jacques have been monitoring and commanding the vehicle throughout all the operations today. Dragon, once it gets to waypoint 2, it's going to stop. The teams, in the meanwhile, are going to be conducting a go, no-go for docking. So that's the final go, no-go poll that we'll do today, and that's the one that's going to get us really excited, because then it's time for Dragon to actually dock to the space station. Dragon's going to make that initial soft contact using a soft capture ring, which is then going to retract to bring Dragon in for the hard capture sequence. And that's where a series of hooks will actually close in to really tightly secure Dragon to that international docking adapter. As a further precaution, Dragon's soft capture system has a set of rotary spring dampeners just to lessen the force of that contact between the spacecraft and the International Space Station. One interesting note, though, unlike Soyuz dockings, where the Soyuz spacecraft and the space station go into free drift, so all the thrusters, all the attitude goes off to lessen any of that force between the spacecraft's docking mechanisms, it's not going to Dragon. Both it and the International Docking Adapter are robust enough that the station's going to remain in attitude control. That's a much that will, at least that's a preferred means of controlling the station, obviously, for the flight control, continue to keep the station in its right attitude. So that will be a notable departure from what we see for Soyuz dockings for this one.
That's right. NASA developed the, along with the International Docking Adapter, they developed the International Docking System Specification, which is then used by SpaceX and other visiting vehicles to develop their docking systems aboard the spacecraft. SpaceX has developed the SpaceX docking system, which is a little bit different than other types of docking systems. It actually uses those passive springs that Dan was just mentioning. The soft capture ring, we actually might be able to see it very soon as Dragon gets closer and closer, is a ring about maybe 2 or 3 feet wide. That's about the same diameter as the hatch, and it has 3 pedals positioned. That contact will be sensed as soon as the soft capture ring gets close enough to actually latch into the opposing pedals of the International Docking Adapter. There are buttons all around the inside of those soft capture ring pedals, and as soon as they're compressed, that's when we'll know. We'll have a signal from our telemetry saying that contact has been made, and at that point, the latching pawls on all those pedals will have engaged, and Dragon will be caught. That is just what we call soft capture. It's actually not the full docking mechanism. So soft capture just means that soft docking ring has made contact with the station. The soft capture ring has sexapod configuration attached to those springs. Once the springs have dampened out any additional maneuvers between the station and the Dragon, it'll then retract, bringing the Dragon closer and closer to the station in for hard capture. That's when we have 12 docking hooks, hard capture hooks, that will activate from the Dragon side and grab onto hooks on the International Docking Adapter side. And when that happens, that's when hard capture has occurred.
Yeah, and
this will all make a little bit more sense when we can get a better view of the docking adapter on the Dragon as it gets a little bit closer. Right now, we are approaching towards waypoint 2.
We are just a couple of minutes away. We just heard Ann McLean radio down that we're inside of 100 meters.
Copy on.
There we go. Getting a good call again from Ann McLean on the space to grounds. Everything looking good so far with Dragon's approach. We're about 80 meters or so away from the station, so only about 60 meters to go until we're going to get to that final waypoint for this evening, morning, whatever time of day it is today. And it's going to hold at 20 meters. And right now the teams are going around doing their final go, no go for docking. So after we get to that final hold point at waypoint 2, it'll be time to move in and use that docking adapter for the very first time.
And we here at SpaceX see these systems. They've been tested hundreds of times in conjunction with NASA. There's actually a docking system simulator that we've used to make sure that these mechanisms will work ahead of time, and everything looks really good so far. So excited to see these things happening in space for the first time.
Getting the views back from the cameras on Dragon itself. Again, you can see that docking adapter coming into view. It's not going to be directly in the center line, as this is actually a separate camera. The center line camera being fed to the crew members on board the International Space Station. That's why it might look a little off center from the heads-up display that you can see on the screen when we have it up. But everything looking good. Again, on board the station, 2 astronauts, Canadian David St. Jacques and NASA astronaut Ann McLean inside monitoring the vehicle. You'll hear them refer to the RPOP, which is the Rendezvous Proximity Operations Program. That's just the name of the program that they're using on a laptop inside of the station to actually monitor Dragon. And as they just demonstrated a little while ago, the crew has the ability to send commands to make Dragon hold or retreat or even abort if they see anything that looks a little out of sorts with its approach. But everything going real smoothly so far. We should be just about 2 minutes away.
Corridor orientation is expected. Copy on.
All right, another good call down. We're about 50 meters away so far, so only 30 meters to go, and then we're at waypoint 2.
Once we're given the go-ahead to approach from waypoint 2, the next big calls we're going to be looking out for are that soft capture contact and then hard capture. You can start to see the space station in great detail here. Again, this is from a view of the forward media cam at the top of the Dragon 2 module. Just to reiterate, this camera is not directly on the center line of the docking axis. This is a fantastic view of Dragon in the sunlight from the International Space Station. If we're lucky enough, we might get some views from the centerline camera in the very center of the hatch. From its soft capture ring deployed, you can actually start to see those 3 petals that I was talking about earlier on that ring, 120 degrees apart. That ring is extended above the hatch by 6 hexapod arms that are all attached to Dragon by springs. So that will be the first part of Dragon to make contact with the ISS. And when it does, those springs will compress and absorb and dampen any of the relative velocity differences between the space station and Dragon. This soft capture system was actually subjected to extensive testing and the 6 degree of freedom dynamic test system at NASA Johnson. And this was actually the very same system they used to test other docking systems at NASA.
And we're hearing that Dragon is now at waypoint 2, about 20 meters away from station. So again,
Houston in 20 meters confirm. Perform step 8 in 1.102. Dragon approach and
station for step 8, we can confirm
really
vehicle mode is hold. Minimum range observed was 19.75. Affected vehicles in the corridor and holding at 20. Performing review.
Right now you're seeing from that centerline camera. This is rebroadcast from the International Space Station. So this is what the astronauts on the station are seeing. It looks like it's aligned right and ready to dock. It's what I was saying before, but this is the same spacecraft that we saw yesterday on top of the Falcon 9 at the Kennedy Space Center. Now it's in space just 20 meters away from the International.
Yeah, and it's all coming to this. It's all coming to that go for docking, which we're going to stand by again. The teams are now going to be doing poll, and then they're going to get the call, and we're going to hear it, and it's going to be Dragon is go for docking. So just 20 meters away, successful hold. I didn't comment earlier, but we did hear that there was a good controllability demo. Again, that was just a demo, just slowing Dragon down to basically mimic the final speeds that it'll be at for docking. And that was also done successfully. We're going to stand by, continue to get this great view of Dragon, and wait for that final go for docking. right. And right now we're just continuing to hold. Dragon still just 20 meters away from the space station. And all the teams now just taking a final look at the data so far without any issues, not tracking any on the spacecraft, and continuing to get some good views as we do have that signal with the International Space Station. So holding at 20, then we're going to be listening for the final go, no go time for Dragon to close in.
This is currently a beautiful view of Dragon 2 in full sunlight. Many of us at SpaceX have waited years for this view. Approaching the International Space Station. Just a quick note about the features you can see on the Dragon 2 from this view. Obviously, the big structure at the top is the nose cone, and it's away from its stowed position for launch and back towards where it is right now for docking and orbital operations. You can also see that soft capture ring. Right now, it's deployed and out in front of the hatch. A bit tough to see the distance between the soft capture ring and the hatch, but it's standing off just a little bit and ready to make contact with the International.
And the station crew is ready for docking.
4 Draco thrusters around the hatch.
And we copy.
And we just heard Ann McLean report the crew is ready
and
to dock.
We're currently assessing lighting.
That call back from the Capcom in Houston, Leslie Ringo, just the teams looking at the lighting. As Tom mentioned a little while ago, the sun is expected to set in about 12 minutes on the station and Dragon, so they'll be heading into an orbital nighttime. So I think they just want to make sure they have all the. We're going to continue to be in the loop all the way up until just 2 meters away, and then we might hear a call out over the space to grounds CHOP, which stands for crew hands off point. That just means everything at that point, Dragon and the space station, including abort commands.
One important thing to remember here, and this sort of just blows my mind every time I stop and think about it, is Dragon looks like it's perfectly still with respect to the space station, and it is, but both the space station and Dragon are moving at 17,500 miles per hour in orbit around the Earth. The orbital mechanics and math required to line these two spacecraft upward are mind-boggling, and it's always impressive to see it happen in real time like this.
And on 1, while we're holding here, please command the docking light to on, ON.
Copy, commanding docking light on.
And so the crew's going to command the docking light on Dragon.
Can we copy?
And we hear confirmation that the command's been sent. Again, this is what the astronauts on board are looking at, centerline camera that they're using to watch as Dragon makes that final approach. The team's all looking at systems, and they're also looking at the communication coverage between here and the International Space Station. They do want to make sure we have a good signal for that final approach and docking. So we might be standing by for a couple of minutes. Dragon able to dock in daytime or is not going to matter for today's operations, but they are going to be looking to make sure we have a strong signal, and we might have a short dropout coming up in just a couple of minutes. So we're going to stand by. Dragon's continuing to hold at just 20 meters away.
You mentioned that docking light being turned on. This is special for me, even in particular, having worked on both the communication system between the Dragon and the space station, and also on that centerline camera module, which has the LED that they were talking about. I spent months at SpaceX with a unit of that on my desk, testing that LED, and to see it happening in space is truly extraordinary.
I was going to ask, so Tom, basically, what is it like to see it sitting there? It looks unreal.
For me and everyone else at SpaceX that has poured their life force into this vehicle for the past how many years, it's unbelievable to see for real. Like I said before, it's kind of wild to see this just 24, 27 hours ago on top of a Falcon 9 and now in space. It's sort of just a dream come true, is what I'd say.
Flying over the Indian Ocean right now. They're actually a couple hundred miles south of Australia, right between Australia and Antarctica. And pretty soon they're going to be crossing the Terminator line. That's the line separating night from day on the Earth's surface. And so things are going to get a little bit darker.
Houston and one for Dragon status. Just want to let you know we're going to wait until sunset so that we have a good view of the backplate.
Copies.
And you just heard that call up to the station. So they are going to wait until sunset, until that final approach, and then sunset is scheduled to come in just about 7 minutes from now at 45 after the hour. So we're going to stand by, continue to get these views of Dragons. We're going to lose signal for a couple of minutes shortly, and then that's going to lock back up right as the sun's going down. And then we'll be ready to move Dragon in from that 20-meter hold point to the docking. We're almost at docking.
There. So don't go anywhere. We're going to hold for just a few minutes. Sunset is expected at 2:45 a.m. Eastern. So as soon as that happens, we'll be able to continue with the docking. Stand by.
Station Houston and 1, stand by as Dragon is about to resume approach.
Station copies.
And we just heard the call up to the International Space Station crew. Dragon is go for approach. You can already see the thrusters firing, so it's leaving that waypoint number 2 where it's been sitting at 20 meters away. Now it's time for the final docking.
At 20 meters, Dragon was just spitting distance away from that international docking adapter. It is closing those 20 meters in preparation for soft capture. So right now it is orbital nighttime. So the light you're seeing is both light from the International Space Station pointed at Dragon, and then the docking light, which is the bright spot in the center of Dragon's hatch, you can see right now. Right now, Dragon's flight computer is using those Draco thrusters, as you can see them firing on your screen to
Station Houston and 1, Dragon is resuming approach and is go for docking. Monitor per steps 9 and 10 in 1.102. Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Station copies. Vehicle mode is approach to docking port. Primary range is decreasing. Vehicle is centered.
Copy all.
And getting good reports from Anne McLean there on board the International Space Station. Dragon is approaching, everything in on the center and still looking good. So the crew is using that on the Dragon spacecraft just to do all of their final monitoring of the vehicle. This camera a little off center. This is not the one the crew's using, but this is one that we have. But you can see now that international docking adapter to a larger black piece of the station. That's a pressurized mating adapter, which is then attached to actually one of the modules, which is known as Node 2 and the Harmony. It's the Harmony Dragon continuing to close in. It's expected to take just about 5 minutes or so, and there's a great side-by-side look. One view on your left from Dragon, two on your right from the International Space Station.
On the view on the left from Dragon looking at the space station, we can finally see those details of the international adapter. The IDA is a passive system, and the Dragon contains all the active components of that docking system. You can actually see those androgynous petals, those 3 petals that are kind of sticking at 120 degrees apart from each other on the IDA on the left-hand side. In the very middle is actually a visual docking target that the astronauts can use to judge whether or not the Dragon is right on course. It has a little stick that comes off from the center of it, so you can see the stick's shadow and determine whether or not you're direct axis. Like Dan said, this camera view on the left from Dragon is not the centerline camera. It's actually the camera.
Range is 9.5 and decreasing. Vehicle is centered. Largest excursion observed is less than half a meter. And less than half a degree.
Copy.
All right, we're inside 10 meters. Halfway there.
Like I was saying, this camera view right here is just a little bit off center from the center line, so it may look like we're not approaching that IDA directly head on, just because the camera's not in the right position, but has that center line camera, which is directly dead on. And as long as we keep hearing these good callouts, it sounds like Dragon is dead right where it needs to be. And there it is. There's that center line camera view that the crew in the International Space Station is using. They use the overlays to figure out, and that guide right there to make sure the Dragon is exactly where it needs to be as it approaches. On the right-hand side, you can start to see the mechanisms of the docking system aboard the Dragon. The very first part of Dragon that will make contact with the ISS is that soft capture ring. You can see it's extended forward front of the Dragon right now. As soon as those pedals make contact, latching pawls will engage and hold the pedals against the opposite ones on the IDA, and contact pins will depress, and we should hear the call out for soft capture achieved.
All right, so we're at that crew hands-off point. That means we're about 2 meters away. Crew no longer sending commands. Dragon doing everything on its own.
Self-capture confirmed.
Mission confirmed.
You can hear the cheers behind us at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. We have confirmation of a soft capture of the Dragon station. You can see in your view the Dragon's still moving around a little bit. That's the soft capture ring is attached to Dragon by way of 6 arms that are all attached to springs that help dampen the motion, the difference in the relative velocities between the Dragon and the space station. This is unbelievable news for everyone here at SpaceX and at NASA.
Yeah, that docking coming at 2:51 a.m. Pacific, 5:51 a.m. over on the East Coast. As the International Space Station and Dragon were flying just about 260 statute miles over planet Earth, New Zealand. So
ring reflection in progress.
Well, we're not quite there yet.
Not quite there yet.
We've achieved soft capture, which is what the call it you heard. So the next step is going to be hard capture. Hard capture is 12 latching hooks that are all around the inside of the Dragon hatch, and they'll actuate and grab onto hooks on the other side and pull and hold the Dragon tight against the ISS.
That's right. This whole process expected to take about 15 minutes. So first that soft capture ring is going to retract, and then the hard capture sequence can begin its process. That'll take about 12 minutes. And then there are 2 umbilicals that will actually get mated to the Dragon spacecraft, and that is to provide power and data to the spacecraft and transfer that over to the station. And at that point, it will be fully attached and ready for the next 5 days. So again, that capture coming at 2:51 a.m. Pacific time, 5:51 a.m. over on the East Coast is the Dragon station. We're flying just north of New Zealand. So there we go.
And you can imagine this. Yeah, this is unbelievable for everyone here that's worked so hard on Dragon and with NASA. You can imagine that soft capture retraction, sort of like Dragon doing a pull-up and bringing itself closer to the station to get those hard capture hooks ready to go. Like I said, this is going to take just a few minutes, so the whole process takes about 15 minutes to get the soft capture ring retract, capture hooks engaged, and then those umbilicals mated. So we still got a little bit more ways to go here. Dragon is attached, and we're all very excited about that. But
we're gonna hang out until that hard capture and everything is complete, and then after that, the action's not over. Then it's on to hatch opening. So it'll take about 2 hours after all of this is complete for the hatches to be open. At least that's what we're tracking on the timeline right now. In that space of time, they have to pressurize what's known as the vestibule. So that's actually the area, both Dragon and the space station, that are normally exposed to the vacuum of space. That is now going to form a tight seal, and so they have to pressurize that. The crew will actually open up a seal manually and insert air from the station into that vestibule. And then they have to do leak checks, obviously, just to make sure that everything is good before they move to opening the hatches. And there's a hatch on the pressurized mating adapter side. There's also a hatch on the Dragon itself. And so that'll be coming up a little bit later. And then we'll actually see crew members go inside of Crew Dragon in the very first time.
They can beat Ripley as soon as they get inside there.
That's right. There is one passenger already on board the Dragon spacecraft attached to the International Space Station.
2 if you count the zero-G indicator. That's right. It's flying along with Ripley there. So for those of you just joining us, we did have a successful soft capture. Like we've been saying, it's going to take just a little bit longer with a lot more action coming up. So stay with us as we head towards eventual hard capture and then hatch opening. Be monitoring and ready to come back.
Ready to hook indicated. MCS reconfiguration in progress.
Station copies and concurs. The undocking plate sensors are off. Congratulations to all of the teams on a successful docking.
And we copy in. Many thanks. Station Houston and 1, hook drive in progress.
Copy.
All right, and so the hard capture sequence is underway. The first set of hooks are in place. The second set now driving, so Dragon almost firmly attached to the International Space Station. Again, once this hard dock is completed, they're going to make two umbilicals, which will actually provide some power and data to the spacecraft and allow it to transfer back and forth with the International Space Station. And you're going to hear calls throughout by NASA astronaut Ann McClain. That's who we're now. And then they're going to be on task to then start all the vestibule pressurization and eventually get the hatches open on the Dragon spacecraft and then go inside. And that's going to be the net we're going to be looking for in a couple hours from now.
That is true. That hard dock sequence, there are 12 total hooks in a ring all around the Dragon hatch, and they close those hooks by driving them, actuating them in sets of 6 each. And so we're going to call out for both the first set of hooks were closed, and we're getting close towards that full hard capture.
We can confirm hard capture is complete.
Hard capture complete.
So thank you.
That means that's
congratulations once again to a huge team around the world to make this possible.
Set of rings was fully retracted.
And we concur to the success of the entire teams around the world.
All right. So Dragon now firmly attached to the International Space Station. So now, again, this is going to kick off about 2 hours or so until we is open.
Houston Station, lab forward hatch is open.
And so again, right now the crew's going to start. Moving in. They're going to open up.
And we can we heard you copied on the lab forward hatch is open at this time. You guys do have a go to pick up in the first yellow activity on David's timeline for the forward team. A leak check and opening the No. 2 forward hatch. Be advised that we're going to need 15 minutes for ventilation to be complete before we'll have you pick up in further PMA activities.
Copy that, it works. And
all right, well, now that Dragon has completed that docking sequence, it's going to go a series of checks. Again, they're going to pressurize the vestibule, and they're going to do some leak checks, and then we're actually going to be able to open up the hatch. For now, though, why don't we send it over to Gary real quick. He's standing by in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Gary, how's everybody feeling there? It's got to be great. I mean, Dragon's now attached to the space station.
Definitely good vibes in here, Dan. Actually, as soon as we got hard capture confirmed, we had a round of applause here at Mission Control Houston. It was a very exciting time, really, of a new era of human spaceflight. This is like the first step until we start having commercial crew providers bringing humans to the International Space Station, launching from American soil once again. Very exciting time. But for the crew, again, a lot of monitoring operations, successful retreat commands sent, everything. It was a very smooth docking for Dragon to the International Space Station. But it's a lot of work to do. Again, like you said, they're going to be pressurizing the vestibule and then actually entering the hatch. We'll be covering that live. You might see them wearing hardline oxygen and taking some air samples, just part of the normal procedures for a new vehicle, or for this particular, to ensure everything is okay. And then maybe later on today, we'll be doing a nice welcoming ceremony to officially welcome Dragon to the International. So again, congratulations from the crew, from the teams here in Mission Control Houston. An amazing docking of Dragon to the International Space Station. A lot of work to do. We'll pass it back to you to really wrap us up, but we got a lot of work to do. Thanks.
All right. Thanks so much, Gary. So we got this thing attached, and now again we're gonna wait a little while while they pressurize the vestibule, do the leak checks, and then it'll be time for hatch opening. So we are going to take a little bit of a break, but before we do, we have a special guest who's just about to join us. We just talked to Doug Hurley a little bit earlier in today's broadcast. He's one of those 2 commercial crew astronauts who's actually slated to fly a Dragon into space a little bit later this year. And now, if we can have him come run in real quick, we have Mr. Bob, the other NASA astronaut. Bob,
good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, Paul.
What's it like to see this thing dock to station?
Well, it's just been a super exciting week for us in Florida after watching the launch. Got on orbit, got activation done, and the next big milestone, autonomous docking and getting that demonstrated. And of course, the station crew is monitoring, but that's how we're going to be getting Dragon on board, docked on station in the future. And so it was just super exciting to see it. I know you heard the applause and all the clapping that went along with the accomplishment today. And so just one more milestone that gets us ready for our flight coming up here.
Bob, how do you expect flying a Dragon and these previous spacecraft that you've flown?
You know, I came to the space station before 2 times with the space shuttle. A lot of manual flying associated with that. So arriving underneath space station, making
Houston station on 1, opening the Note 2 forward end fan.
Basically four people to monitor the systems at the same time that you were pushing the flying task. Dragon's a lot different than that. You know, Doug and I will do it for the first time together, primarily in a monitoring role. We may push a button or two to demonstrate that we have the capability to intervene if we need to. But the vehicle is pretty much going to do the work autonomously, just like it did today.
It's great to hear.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us real quick, Bob. Successful docking to the International Space Station, Dragon now attached. Again, so for now, we are going to take a quick break for about 2 hours while we wait for all the leak checks to take place, and then it's time for hatch opening. So we're going to see crew members go inside for the first time. And it sounds like everybody's getting pretty excited here at SpaceX headquarters.
So don't go anywhere. We will be back after a short break to cover the rest of Hatch Open when that comes around.